Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we have a special guest joining us for our class. I have Ainsley Allison, who's the communication manager for the City of Pelham. Ainsley used to work as a broadcast news producer, which is where she and I met and became good friends. And now she has transitioned into the world of government PR. So she's going to join us today, talk a little bit about the importance of media relations within the PR field. So thank you so much, Ainsley, for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about what you do day to day and the importance that media relations plays in that role?
So my role is kind of evolving right now. This is a brand new position with the City of Pelham. I've currently been in this role about a month. So day to day very much is very similar to news life in that every day is different, but it's kind of the same at the same time. We have goals and strategies that we are currently working to develop and deploy across the city. Right now, I'm very much in a sort of an audit mode with our social media and our comms team, trying to identify people within all the departments of our city to put together a team of people to help set the message tone that we want to have in our city moving forward.
Excellent. So what are some of the key activities that you would do within media relations? A lot of people think it's just writing a press release and then you're done. But we, of course, know media relations is a lot more involved in that. So what does that involve in your position?
So right now, we will brainstorm ideas once a week with our leadership team here at the city. So I meet with all the department heads once a week, at least, if not more, to talk about what they've got going on in their departments. We're very much trying to be open and transparent, which is not, I'm not going to say it's not been a problem with our city in the past. It's just that they didn't have the expert in place to sort of craft that message for the city. So, we meet weekly and we talk about really the good things that are going on with the City of Pelham. Nobody wants to deal with the negative, especially in 2020, which we don't have. I mean, we've got a fantastic city here. There's lots to offer. But we have found that there are a lot of people who've lived here for years and years and years and years who are our stakeholders that don't know about a lot of stuff that's going on. So media relations is very much just telling stories right now for us. And so it may be just pushing it out on social media because ultimately that's who our stakeholder is. In this day and age, we don't necessarily need the media to communicate our message. And so we very much push things out to our stakeholders, and the media pays attention to what we're doing on social media. So news releases are very few and far between these days. I'll have a report. We pushed out our $65 million budget the other day. It sounds super boring, but we talk about the fact that our city has recovered. Did we have cuts from COVID? Yes, but that's not how we build our budget. When we were pushing the information out, our budget, we're actually very fortunate in Pelham. And so that's the story that we told. We're only down 2.5%, where you see some other cities, some larger cities, especially those football type cities like Tuscaloosa, who are having to cut their budget by almost half because of COVID. So we are highlighting the positive that's happening in our city. And yeah, we'll do a news release every now and then, but it's not the top of my priority list.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that the ways that PR professionals are working with media outlets have changed pretty drastically, because it used to be that a PR professional would send out a media release and just hope and pray that the reporter would pick up the story. But a lot of times it takes the initiative of a PR professional kind of communicating that out to their community stakeholders first, and the reporters are really coming to you now with some important information. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's really important for you and your brand to communicate out through your channels and then also address media questions that come in. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. We have, for example, like I pushed out it was just a picture with a phone number and please report flooding. We've had issues with flooding in the past in Pelham. And so when the hurricane was coming through a couple weeks ago, we have ways that we can code things when they're called into dispatch. This is probably more than your students want to know, but we can code things so we can track things and we could potentially get grants for problem areas. So we need our communities to report these things to us. So I just simply pushed out a quick little picture. Please call dispatch if you see flooding. We need to know these things so we can get grants to improve our roads and bridges and our water system. I had 2 calls from reporters within probably an hour. Is there anything else you guys are doing to prepare for flooding? We saw your news release or your post on Twitter or Facebook or wherever they saw it. So if it was a larger situation where I'm pushing something out on social media, in crisis communications, for example, I would communicate, like, I don't have time to answer the phone 4 times plus, whoever's calling me from AL.com and all that sort of thing. So I'll push out information on Twitter, especially for crisis comms, if we were to ever have it, to coordinate with the media and let them know, here's a good place for you to go, instead of them just rushing to where we are and maybe not being in a good area. I very much want to take care of my reporters that cover our city.
And I think you just mentioned a really important aspect of media relations is wanting to take care of reporters and media partners. So talk a little bit about how you build relationships with your local media partners and how that's almost like a symbiotic, reciprocal relationship for PR professionals.
Sure, yeah. So, of course, having the news background that I have, it was not as difficult for me to create those partnerships because they already knew me and trusted me from that side of things. They knew that I know what a day in the life is like. But if you're not on that side of things, I would encourage anyone who's going to become a PR professional to, set up a meeting with your local reporters or the news directors, or just call and find out, hey, who's covering this beat, if it's entertainment or sports or government, whatever, like find out who the reporter is that would likely cover something that you're trying to pitch to them and set up a lunch meeting. I've had new reporters who have come into the market since I left the dark side and came to the right side, who have called me and, hey, I'm a new reporter in town. Can we go to lunch can we go to lunch? Can we have coffee? Just so I can pick your brain about what's going on. And so that has been a breath of fresh air, because they know that they can trust me and that I'm going to do whatever I can to make their job easier. And in turn, sometimes I'm getting 2 or 3 stories out that just because of those relationships, they're willing, if I help them in a crisis, they're going to be willing to help me with those good news stories down the road.
Exactly. And so it's really about you providing what they need. They help you provide what you need. And it's a good relationship. And I love the advice of, even if you know the industry, having to maintain those relationships continually through small things like coffee or asking them what they need and things like that. So that is excellent advice for students. And it also shows the importance of kind of the convergent learning pattern that we do at Montevallo. We train our journalists in PR. We train our PR professionals in journalism because of how closely intertwined they are. So you guys can hear a little bit of the method to the madness of our faculty of why you're doing both. So Ainsley, talk to me a little bit about what the role of writing and storytelling plays in your everyday work.
I'm always working with words. And in the news business, we always went by a motto, at least at the TV station that I worked for, was to whiff them, what's in it for me. If you can't answer that question for yourself, then the stakeholder or the person that you're writing to is not going to be able to answer that question for themselves. So if you can't answer that question, you might want to consider whether it's really a story that you want to put out there. With a news release, if you're doing a traditional news release or even a social media news release, you always have a character for your story, and visuals are super important. So Um, our Parks and Rec department, for example, just recently wanted to promote their fall program guide. The tons of stuff happening now that COVID has kind of allowed our Parks and Rec to open back up. And so I just flipped through it and I was looking, I was like, how can I, like, a program guide is not something that you would typically do a news release on. And I thought it was a little trivial, to be honest with you. But then I saw some of the activities that they have for senior adults. And so I just messaged, I texted the Parks and Rec director. I was like, hey, can you get me a couple quotes from like one of your seniors who's been to every program that you did? Because our senior center isn't open anymore. And so she provided and it was simple. Like I got the department head to do the legwork and find me a character because they're the people who interact. So very much rely on a team of people. And she got me some fantastic quotes from this lady who was like, if I had been at home and you didn't offer these programs either virtually or a drive up, I would have been at home and I would have been so lonely because my husband died. And it was just, even though I didn't have a picture of her, you could kind of imagine what this lady looked like. Same sort of deal. We brought in an intern actually into our city to work with us in COVID. So she goes to Sanford and she's up in like her major, I guess, public health, whatever. But she's working with our fire department. And so we were like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of unheard of. Don't know if other cities are doing that. So she was actually in quarantine because she had been exposed to COVID. Thankfully, she didn't have it. But I was like, snap a picture of yourself and let's introduce you to the public. So always have a character for your story and always have an expert lined up and ready to go to.
Yeah, I think that that's great advice in terms of storytelling, making sure that you really personalize information instead of just making about straight facts. You want it to be memorable through personal stories. But I also like the discussion you're having about the importance of visuals. We try to train our students to be multimedia and be able to do everything from video, social media, analytics, the writing. So talk to me about how important it is for you as in your role to really be trained in all methods of communication.
Oh, sure. So it's crazy. So I'm kind of like what we call in television news, like a one-man band PR professional, if you will. I have all sorts of equipment to do photos, videos. I'm a Mac enthusiast, so we have Final Cut Pro that I edit on here at the city. I have a cool little gimbal that I use for phone. So if I need a Facebook Live, like it holds it steady. And so, I was really like photos and videos were very much second nature to me moving into PR because of my background in television. But graphics design is really something that I have come to enjoy. And it's kind of been self-taught because I didn't get that when I was in the broadcast news. I was focused on pictures and video and sound. But finding ways to be creative when you don't necessarily have a photo or video that tells your story, that's been super fun for me to do over the past few years. So here I am, a seasoned professional in both television news and now public relations and branding. That's been so much fun to continue learning, even if it is self-taught. I'm not the best in the world, but I'm better than some.
Yeah.
So,
and Canva is free and it is easy to use, right? So I love that spirit of always wanting to learn. That's something that's really important for media professionals too, I think. Well, as we wrap up, Ainsley, why don't you tell our students a little bit about why you enjoy media relations and public relations overall, and maybe some quick words of advice for students thinking about this as a career.
So media relations and public relations, it allows me to continue to use my degree. So I don't feel like I went to college for no reason now that I'm not in broadcast news anymore. But it's this position that I'm in now is actually a little bit more demanding of my time. Even when I was a PIO for our public safety agency originally, but also in television, you never know how long you're going to have to work and what's going to happen and if a snowflake is going to fall in Alabama. this profession actually does allow me to spend more time with my family, which is something that was very important to me. I'm not saying there aren't nights and weekends involved, because every other Monday I'm at a city council meeting, which doesn't sound the most glamorous thing in the world. So there are commitments outside of the normal 9 to 5 business hours, or 8 to 5 or whatever. So anybody going into this field should know that it's going to require a commitment, probably more than 40 hours a week. But if you're good at your job and you enjoy what you do, it's not taxing. It doesn't seem like it's pointless, I guess. But just as far as advice in this field, be willing to always meet new people. I was just thinking the other day about the scope of the amount of people. Like, I thought I knew gobs of people, because the television industry, is so vast and so far and wide, but then you work with people here and you work with people there, and then people come from, like, people all over, yet it still feels really small. It's kind of the same way when I transitioned into being a PIO for law enforcement. Like, law enforcement's everywhere, but then, like, you meet these industry professionals and you create friends, and people that you could call on who live in Texas, who live in Florida. And now being in this role with the city, like, the government aspect of it, I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose. But now, like, I'm meeting city and county leaders and really sponging all of that up and learning about that. So, the amount of people that I know and the resources, that I have, and it could benefit us down the road. So I don't know if that's really what you were looking for, but I couldn't think of a more rewarding career. I love the city that I work for. And so it's important to me to talk about all the wonderful things that are happening here. So, find something that you're passionate about to pitch stories about. I was speaking with a young girl who is graduating in December in Tuscaloosa just the other day. And she was like, well, I think I might want to do entertainment, but I also might want to do sports. I'm like, you really need to narrow that in, like, now before December. Because you've got to be passionate about what you are pitching, and you've got to believe in it.
Yeah, really great points that both people and relationships are critically important in PR and media relations, as is passion. I think that's kind of the underlying current of PR as a profession, is just really being passionate about what you do in whatever form that comes. So thank you so much, Ainsley. It was great hearing some of your advice and experiences. And we hope to have you at Montevallo in person pretty soon, if COVID will go away. So thank you so much.
Sounds good. Bye.
All right. Bye, students. Thanks so much for paying attention. And I will be in touch with you guys soon.